I'm still learning, line upon line, slowly changing this heart of mine. Yes, I've got blind spots, they'll fade away, and I'll see clearly someday.
Hi again, and welcome to Still Learning, a Come Follow Me podcast. The aim of all gospel learning is to deepen our conversion and become more like the Savior. So our intent here is not to just share facts, but to invite the gospel to change our hearts, our views, and our lives.
In order for that to happen, we will need the Holy Spirit to guide our conversation today. We are praying for that, and that you too will receive personal inspiration and instruction from the Spirit as we explore the teachings of the gospel together.
I'm Gunnar Michael Anderson. I'm a convert of more than 30 years, and my passion is telling the extraordinary story of Joseph and Emma Smith through musical theater.
And I'm Rebecca Burnham. I have had the blessing of challenging life experiences that were carefully crafted by my Heavenly Father to teach me to ask searching questions and to get strength from the Lord instead of trying to coast on the backs of my pioneer ancestors. Each of them had to make their own sacrifices to come to know Him. I love the Lord's call for us to build Zion. I'm a playwright, composer, and co-founder of Summit Stages, where we are gathering a mighty team to unleash the power of musical theater to build Zion. Because we see music as a powerful tool for teaching and touching hearts, we include an original song in every episode.
And we're both still learning, seeking to draw nearer to Jesus Christ through the truths of the restoration. And we invite you to join us on our journey and discover the blessings that come as we follow Jesus Christ together. Rebecca, we've got some interesting chapters in the D&C to cover today.
I'm wondering if we should start with 95, because I learned this week that Section 94 and Section 97 were both received in August, but 95 and 6 were received in June of 1833.
But we can handle it in whatever order you want. I'm ready.
Okay, I love this beginning for Section 95. Where the Lord says, "Verily, thus saith the Lord unto you, whom I love. And whom I love I also chasten, that their sins may be forgiven. For with the chastisement I prepare a way for their deliverance in all things out of temptation. And I have loved you. Wherefore ye must needs be chastened, and stand rebuked before my face." This whole concept of being chastened, of welcoming the chastening of the Lord, of chastening being a proof of His love, I think is so vital to understand both what happened in history, but also to understand how the Lord works in my life.
Yeah, I would also think that if you're a coach of a sports team, if you've ever coached a sports team, the kids who have no hope of improving, who have no desire, who have no skill, you don't spend a lot of time coaching them. And by coaching, you're on them. I remember going through a coaching clinic. I was a fairly highly certified soccer coach back when I was in my 30s. And I remember going to a clinic, and the instructor was a professional soccer coach from Poland. And one of the things he said is, if you want to build a great team, you need to spend your time focused on the really good players. Take the good players and make them great. He says, your bad players, they're never going to be great. So you need to spend your time on your good players and move your good players forward. That's how you make a great team. I think about this for the Lord. If you're being chastised, then you're on that good squad, right? You're on that A squad. The Lord's on you. He's coaching you, getting you better. He's moving you from grace to grace, as we spoke a little bit last week. And if you're not hearing very much from the Lord, maybe you need to be doing something a little bit differently than you're doing now.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me that this chastening is happening. We're getting a lot of chastening lately, but it's just after the Lord has started calling them friends. Earlier on in the Revelations, He'd called them my servants. He called them little children. And recently He started to call them friends. And also it seems like he's doing some more chastening. And it reminded me of some other scriptures about chastening, one of which is really important to me. So I think I want to actually go for a second to Webster's 1828 dictionary. I love Webster's 1828 dictionary. Anytime I'm studying and there's a word that I'm just like, I'm not sure what that means, I like to look it up in Webster's 1828 because that would be the language that Joseph Smith was familiar with. So Webster's 1828 actually has 3 definitions for chastening, to chasten. One is to correct by punishment, to punish, to inflict pain for the purpose of reclaiming an offender. 2 is to afflict by other means. And 3 is to purify from errors or faults. I love that. That doesn't even have a expression of anything punitive in it. It's about purification. And that takes me to Hebrews 12. Hebrews 12 has a whole bunch about chastening. I want to just focus on 4 to 5 and 10 to 11. This is Paul talking. He says, "My son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. For earthly fathers, verily for a few days chastened us after their own pleasure." Our earthly fathers sometimes chastened us because they were mad. "But he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness." So I love that. Even more, Ether 2:14 has changed my life and needs to change it more. This is where the brother of Jared has an interview that is not joyous with the Lord. In Ether 2, verse 14, it says, "And it came to pass at the end of 4 years that the Lord came again unto the brother of Jared, and stood in a cloud, and talked with him. And for the space of 3 hours did the Lord talk with the brother of Jared, and chastened him, because he remembered not to call upon the name of the Lord." There's a whole lot to unpack there.
I can't remember a time that anybody chastened me for 3 hours. Going back to that third definition, could you read it again? Purifying?
To purify from errors or faults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I joined the church on a testimony of Joseph Smith as a prophet. My wife focused on reading the Book of Mormon, read the whole thing before we joined the church. Me, I just kind of put it aside and focused on Joseph Smith. I mean, I read whatever verse as the missionaries were instructing us, but I focused on Joseph Smith. I wanted to see if I could find out what kind of person he was, what he went through, what his life was. And I was just, that's when I fell in love with the guy and his wife. And I was just aghast at what the saints went through as the church was being organized. And through that process, I gained a testimony of him. And I felt like if I could get a testimony of Joseph Smith as a prophet, then I'd be okay with whatever he wrote. Because then when I read it, I'd be like, okay, well, this came out of a prophet. Then this is the way it is. If I don't understand it, then it's not because it's not true. It's that I don't understand it. If I disagree with it, that it's not because it's not true. It's because I haven't developed an understanding of it. And we've talked about that before. There's a difference between claiming something is wrong and claiming something is something I don't understand. And so it's never shaken my testimony at all, the fact that I might run across something that doesn't make sense to me, that I don't understand. I just remember, they don't teach you everything about the temple, right? When you're going through the missionary lessons, and we were getting ready to go to the temple, I remember being real nervous about that. I remember thinking, this is it. This is where they're killing chickens. I just know it. I just know, because why else would not everybody be a member of the church? Why wouldn't everybody be Mormon? Because everything else is just so perfect and makes so much sense. They got to be doing something really bizarre in the temple, and of course they weren't. But I remember thinking, it's every time we went into another room, I was like, okay, this is the chicken killing room, right? So everybody's going to turn weird all of a sudden. It never happened, but that was, kind of what was going through my mind. That is a tangent to a tangent to a tangent.
But keep those tangents.
We were talking about chastening, right? I lost track of my tangents.
We went from chastening to how you got your testimony based on
Okay,
Joseph
yeah.
Smith, and you knew that whatever he said, because he was
Yes.
a prophet.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things when you're talking about Joseph Smith and studying about Joseph Smith is how many times in the Doctrine and Covenants is he chastened? Right. And it's
Yeah.
right there. And I felt like, man, I find it really hard. I find it rather hard to believe. Now, my testimony isn't built on this. It just adds to it. But
Yeah.
it seems to me that it would be less dangerous for Joseph Smith if he just kind of excluded himself from all those chastenings. When we recorded the revelations, it's you and you and you that are wrong. It's you and you and you that need to fix things. I'm the prophet. I'm good. You and you and you. Yeah. And the fact that he's got people, especially as the church grows, he's got people who are throwing stones at him and saying, hey, he's not really a prophet. A prophet wouldn't really act like that. Meanwhile, he's saying, well, the Lord's kind of saying the same thing to me, and he's writing it down. So It's like he's giving the fodder to throw back at him. It reminds me, we're going to get into it in a little bit, but when we get to D&C 97, I want to talk a little bit about the manifesto, the mob's manifesto against the saints,
Yes.
what they were calling the saints out on before they started attacking. And, they're reproving Joseph too, falsely.
Yeah.
Let's get back
Okay, I
to
do.
your point. Yeah.
So yeah, when I read about the brother of Jared talking with the Lord for 3 hours and being chastened, that is just stunning. That sounds like a very difficult experience. And then in the next chapter, the brother of Jared sees the finger of the Lord and is ushered into his presence. One time as I was studying this, it occurred to me there are different kinds of relationships that have different expectations. At the time, I was trying to be somebody who didn't have needs in the relationship that should be closest, in my marriage. I realized that the Lord's chastening of the brother of Jared was an invitation into closer relationship. I needed to learn to be real in relationship if I wanted to get into closer relationship. That's A. And B, that if I wanted to get closer to the Lord, I would need to be prepared for his chastening. And it's a scary thought. But
Yeah, it can be if we think of chastening as somebody scolding us,
yeah.
right? But to your point about that third definition, I don't really know how that chastening happens, but going back, started with the soccer coaching metaphor. I'll continue with that. One of the things that we were taught was that, listen, you got to make the practice fun, because if it's fun, kids keep wanting to do it, right? And so you run all these drills and you always stop the drill while it's still fun, so they long for it some more, right? I remember there was this one coach who brought squirt guns to practice, and they were trying to have a practice, and they were running around squirting each other with squirt guns. The kids weren't learning anything. The coach was being really nice and stuff like this.
Yeah.
My kids were always super disciplined. They knew exactly where they were supposed to stand. Even when they were 6 years old, they knew exactly where they were supposed to stand on the field when the game started. And they really understood the fundamentals. But I worked them really hard. I was on them, right? And I remember this one game, we were a really good team that year. And it was like number 1 against number 2, and we lost. And the kids just collapsed on the field and they were crying. And I found out at some point that they weren't crying for themselves because they lost. They were crying because they had let me down. And I thought,
They loved you a
and so-
lot.
And I bring this up because I made them hurt in practice. They were doing push-ups. They were having to run up and down the stadium steps. They were experiencing a lot of physical pain through the drills that we would run. but they also knew that it made them great. They were a great team, and they were bonded really well together, and they were anxious to get to practice. They were anxious to continue growing and learning, and I feel like that's the Lord. The kids knew that I loved them, and they wanted to perform. And the other thing is, when we were running laps or whatever, I was running with them. So, I was there with them. We were all in it together. And I feel like that's what the Lord does too. I'd never really thought of the metaphor of coaching being one for the way the Lord works with us. I think that when you get that chastening from the Lord, you're in a partnership. You know that you've got the same goals, and he's helping you attain those goals. His chasing is not, you're just doing bad, you got to do better. Come on, get up, stop watching TV. Come on, let's go. What are you doing? There's 4 hours of football. Who needs to watch 4 hours of football? He's not saying stuff like that, right? You are yoked together, trying to accomplish the same thing, and he's helping you accomplish what it is you want to accomplish.
Gunnar, I love that, because my personal experience has been that when the Lord was chastening me is one of the times when I have felt his love the most.
Yeah. There was a general conference speaker, I think it was one of the sisters, who talked about shame. When we feel shame, that's not from the Lord. That's from the adversaries. So if you're thinking of chastening, and I'm not talking about you specifically, I'm just saying a person is thinking about chastening as something where you just feel not good enough. You're being chastened because you're ashamed. You feel any kind of shame in that. That's not chastening from the Lord.
Yeah. And today our song is about this whole concept of chastening. Let's play that.
I am immune to offense when I'm dealing with babies. I don't expect them to see and respond to my needs. And I can be patient with strangers who rage and accuse me. Detach from their anger, avoid getting lost in the weeds. But if you would like to get closer to me than that stranger, if customer service is not all you want me to be, if I would hold you in my heart and my mind as my equal, then I'm gonna have to get real about what's up with me. But oh, what if it's more than you bargained for? Can I be real without scaring you? What if I show my heart, you go running for cover? Yet, oh, what if you stay? Lord, dost thou treat me as gently as I treat a baby? Bear with my tantrums, my failure to own my misdeeds, my tendency time and again to forget and ignore thee. Still constant and quietly thou dost attend to my needs. But here I am longing for closer than I have been lately, longing to know thee, to live within thy embrace. What will it mean if I say that I'm ready for real? How do I put down my fear of seeking thy face? 'Cause oh,
So, Rebecca, one of the things I love about your songs is how you take real life, a situation in real life, and connect it back to the gospel. This idea that everything has a gospel correlation, and that you can learn how your situation, whatever it is, that there's an eternal perspective to it. And there's something that you can take from the scriptures written in Old English and apply it to your life today.
You just
Really
did with
great song.
coaching.
Oh, I have so many soccer metaphors to the gospel. The coaching thing I hadn't thought of before, but I've got all kinds of things with soccer. Yeah.
I love it.
So thank you for sharing that song.
Oh, thank you.
Can I talk a little bit more about DNC 95 before we move on?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is interesting about DNC 95 is that, here we've got this progression. In January of 1833, Joseph receives a revelation about needing to build a house and hold a school. And he writes in January to W. Phelps and says, "You will see that the Lord commanded us in Kirtland to build a house of God and establish a school for the prophets. This is the word of the Lord unto us, and we must, yea, the Lord helping us, we will obey. As on conditions of our obedience, he has promised us great things, yea, even a visit from the heavens to honor us with his own presence." And now in May, nearly 4 months after he writes this letter to build the house, they formed a committee to raise funds. But the whole point is that, 4 months had gone by and they weren't taking action. And then it was nearly a month later, again, that neither this committee or any other church leaders had taken any steps towards constructing this temple. And then we received this revelation, and that very day, Hiram Smith and Reynolds Cahoon and others begin the process of constructing this temple. They take the chastisement of the Lord to heart. And one of the things that I think is neat is verse 11, where the Lord says, "Verily I say unto you, it is my will that you should build a house. If you keep my commandments, you shall have power to build it." And I think that statement, if you keep my commandments, you shall have power to build it, is a promise to all of us. It's not just a promise about building the temple. It's about everything we endeavor to do. We keep the commandments of the Lord as we understand them the best we can. We'll have power to do what we feel compelled to do, and that we feel like the Lord is asking us to do. And we see that with the saints. The saints, when they started building this temple, when they get together and they realize, hey, we're being chastised, we need to do this. They have this meeting, and some of the brethren tell Joseph, they say, "Joseph, how do we do this? The saints are predominantly poor. Some of us don't even have shoes. We don't have shoes, let alone the tools to build a temple." And Hiram's like, "Yeah, but we have some tools." And so, he runs out there and he starts clearing the hay.
Wow.
So they could start digging the foundation.
Wow.
And sure enough, 3 years later, they've got a temple built.
Wow.
It was the most magnificent building in that area of the country at that time. And, eventually the money came, eventually the people came, and the way was cleared. And I think we've all experienced that in something that we've done in our lives that we just didn't know how it was going to happen. For me, the most remarkable example in my own life was when I decided I needed to get an MBA. And I had two problems. One was I didn't have a bachelor's degree. And I saw no reason to get a bachelor's degree. I couldn't figure out what they were going to possibly teach me that would do me any good. I wanted to be a computer programmer. I figured it wasn't going to take 4 years to learn how to program computers. So I went to a trade school. I think it took 9 months and I ended up with a career as a computer programmer. But I wanted a master's degree because there's a lot of neat things you learn getting an MBA. It would be different if I was trying to be a physicist or an astronomer or something like this, right? But for the profession I was trying to go into, I just didn't see the need. It seemed like an unnecessary delay in getting my career started. The other part was I wanted to get an MBA at a good school, top-rated school. Long story short, I was able to get accepted into a top 16 school, the top school here in the South for MBAs. I mean, it was hard. There were a lot of tests I had to take and I had to do a lot of things to make everybody comfortable. But I was able to get my MBA. The other part was that it was going to cost $90,000, and I didn't have $90,000. What I had was $3,000. That was the first payment, was $3,000. And then there was going to be another payment due in 21 days. And I sat down with my wife and I was like, I don't know. It feels like the right thing to do. Feels like this is what we should do. And she was like, it feels right to me too. So let's just put that $3,000 down and go.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
This was before you were even a member of the church.
No, I was a member of the church at that time. But it just felt like that's what I was supposed to do. And I figured somehow it was going to work out. And it did. The money kept showing up.
How?
And the big thing was the company I was working for had a policy of only educational reimbursements. They pay $5,000 maximum for MBAs after you got your degree.
Okay.
And for some reason, I still don't know why, they decided to cough up $65,000 for me to get my MBA. And as far as I know, I'm the only one they've ever done that with. So then it just became about making up the difference, which, now you're talking, what, 25,000?
Yeah.
7, yeah.
Pocket change.
Well, I'm just saying it's a lot different than 90,000, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. And so, yeah. At the very end, I think I took a couple of student loans and it all worked out. But my point is that I feel like we were doing what the Lord wanted me to do. I was moving forward. I know I mentioned it to some of the other guys in class and they thought I was nuts, and they're probably right. Sometimes you just get that impression that you're doing the right thing and you just need to move forward. And it was an example in my life of the Lord making up the difference.
Yeah. I love the connections between your story and Hiram's response when the Lord says, no, that temple that you can't do.
Yeah.
You don't have the tools. He didn't say all those words, but when the Lord makes the call, we take our 5 loaves and fishes, right? You had $3,000.
Yeah.
Hiram had a scythe. He could clear the hay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And rather than sit there and say, I need to see how it's going to work before I'm going to start, the Lord invites us to step forward and start, and then his blessings follow.
Yeah. Elder Bednar says sometimes, you just see enough to see where you need to put your foot, where you need to take the next step.
Yeah.
And that's all the Lord is revealing to you. And so you take that step, and then the one after that shows up. So you take that one. And, he's had some really terrific messages about moving forward in faith, and the whole, that statement means you move.
Yeah.
Right? You move forward. You don't sit on the couch saying, I've got faith, and the Lord's going to call me up on the phone and say, I got your $90,000 covered. I got it all figured out. Here it goes. You just move forward.
I love that. And to me, that connects with, I'm really glad you brought up D&C, 95:11, because there were a bunch of verses around that area that struck me. Going back to verse 6, they who are not chosen have sinned a very grievous sin, in that they are walking in darkness at noonday. And I think so often we surround ourselves in darkness when we get hung up on our doubts instead of moving forward with that $3,000.
Yeah, it's so easy to doubt yourself.
Yeah.
We're artists. We can look around us and see a world of better art than what we think we're capable of producing, right?
Yep.
I want to say most of my life, that's held me back because I just felt like I wasn't good enough. I couldn't write something that good, and jealous of people who had written what I thought were perfect songs and
Yeah.
incredible music. And how could Beethoven take 4 notes and turn it into 38 minutes of music? You know, how do you do that? Yeah, how could you be that good? Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then one day I realized I didn't need to write Beethoven's 10th Symphony. I didn't need to be better than anybody else that was out there. I just needed to be the best Gunnar and Michael Anderson
Yeah.
that I could be.
Yeah.
And I just needed to produce that music because the world already has Beethoven. The world already has Billy Joel. They don't need another one.
No.
Yeah, but they don't have a Gunnar Michael Anderson or a Rebecca Burnham. So we need to contribute.
I love that. We
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Where the Lord then says in verse 10, nevertheless, my servant sinned a very grievous sin, and contentions arose in the school of the prophets, which was very grievous unto me, saith your Lord. Therefore I sent them forth to be chastened. Carrying on to 11 and 12. Verily I say unto you, it is my will that you build a house. If you keep my commandments, you shall have power to build it, like you just said, Gunnar. If you keep not my commandments, the love of the Father shall not continue with you. Therefore you shall walk in darkness. And there's so much here about connection between love, light, and power. And it strikes me that when we get hung up on our doubts instead of moving forward in faith, we surround ourselves with darkness and contentions arise, which shuts us off from the love of God. Not that he stops loving us. He will love us always, but we stop feeling it.
Yeah, but I would also say that anytime you want to do anything and you get the ball moving, there's going to be contentions. There's going to be somebody with an opinion that's not the same as yours. And they're going to feel compelled to express it. And they're going to try to collect other people to get on board with their opinion. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that there was contention. What surprises me is that Joseph was able to move through it.
Yeah.
And I suppose it shouldn't surprise me because he was the prophet of the Lord. But I mean, that's the thing. If you take the Lord out of the picture and just sort of see what was going on and where they ended up in Nauvoo with over 20,000 people. And I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable until you pause and say, oh, well, of course, it's not unbelievable. The Lord was kind of making all this happen. You know, was supporting Joseph as he went through this. And he got chastised a lot, you know, penalized a lot. But you know, it also brings me back to ENC 94, which, is it okay if I jump there? We can jump back and forth if you got more to say about 95. But, you know, 94, that's where, you know, the Lord shows the pattern for building the temple. But what's interesting is, you know, he gives some rough measurements. He doesn't give them the blueprint and the architectural drawings. And I mean, he shows them the temple, right? They're able to see it in the vision, but he doesn't give them precise measurements on anything. What I think is impressive is that it's a pattern with the Lord. When he gives direction, he leaves room for us to use our own gifts to create beauty and meaning. Mm-hmm. And I ran across this great quote from President Thomas S. Monson. He said, God left the world unfinished for man to work his skill upon. He left the electricity in the cloud, the oil in the earth. He left the rivers unbridged and the forests unfelled and the cities unbuilt. God gives to man the challenge of raw materials, not the ease of finished things. He leaves the pictures unpainted and the music unsung and the problems unsolved, that man might know the joys and glories of creation.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I read something like that and I think, man, I miss President Monson.
Yeah.
He was a poet.
Yeah. Gunnar, I just want to, you talked about as soon as we start doing anything, there's going to contentions arise. And that is absolutely true. There's like, especially if you're trying to do something that is of worth, you can guarantee that there's going to be opposition because that's like an eternal law. However, I do also truly believe that when we are united in a divine purpose, when we have our marching orders from the Lord, and we are willingly taking those marching orders, that is a key to unity because it involves our relationship with him, right? And then that draws us.
But I would also say, I don't disagree with you, except I would like to point out that there's a continuum, right? And we're
Yes.
all on this path,
Yeah.
and we're all in different places on that path, and we all are still learning as we go. So, there are times in our lifetimes where the first presidency has given some pretty specific direction, and we haven't all said, "Let's go." We've had contention among the saints. So I do think that when we do achieve Zion, that's what we will find.
Yeah.
I think that we've all probably worked on teams, worked on shows, worked in environments where everybody was of one heart and one mind. And it might not have even been a religious context, just your high performing team.
Yeah.
And it feels wonderful. I'm going back to soccer again. I just seem to be on this soccer horse, if that's a thing, today. But I know that there were times where I walked off the soccer field feeling like I had just been to the temple, feeling just this beautiful, wonderful, elevated, just a real beautiful spiritual experience. And it's as much to do with the opposing team as our team. There was just a lot of harmony between the teams. There wasn't a lot of, contention between the teams. Just guys out there really playing as hard as they could, sweating, enjoying the bodies the Lord gave us and this game that we had all fallen in love with. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
There's one other thing about DNC 94, and that is in DNC 94, the Lord commands the saints to build 3 buildings. He's there to build a house for the first presidency and other church leaders, a house to print the scriptures, and the final one for the house of the Lord, for the temple. And they only got the temple built. But the whole idea was that those 3 buildings were supposed to be together and they would be the center of the town. It's interesting to look at that and realize that the Lord is sending us a message about the Lord's priorities. Those are his 3 priorities. So what are those priorities?
So you said the house for the presidency, which is today the church office building.
The presidency and the other church officers.
So that is the ongoing direction, revelation, sustaining of the brethren.
Right. That's exactly right. We talk often about bending our will to the Lord's will, right? So it seems like if this is the Lord's will, that what the Lord is telling us that our priorities need to be sustaining and following the prophets, right? Reading and studying the scriptures.
Studying the scriptures.
And placing the Lord at the center of our life. Going to the temple, but the Lord being, it's not just going to the temple, right? It's being a temple, right?
It's living in covenant relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. I'd never really
Yeah.
thought about that, but I had thought about those 3 things. Of course, we talk about those 3 things all the time, but I hadn't connected it to DNC 94. But in my reading, preparing for today, somebody had pointed that out, and I thought that was a really excellent point that they made.
I love that. Do you want to give us the historical context? What's happening right before 94 and 97?
So, in July of 1833, we have the Evening and Morning Star, which is a church newspaper, and it's being published in Independence. W.W. Phelps is the editor, and he publishes an article called Free People of Color. Now, we have to remember that Missouri is a slave state.
Right.
I think he didn't think for 2 seconds about the title of that article.
Right. Right. That wasn't, yeah.
I think
Understood.
he just, yeah, here we go. Yeah. This is something about people of color, about the people of color who are free. And it was really a message to blacks who were free, who were not slaves, and telling them, don't come to Missouri. Missouri is a slave state. That's the crux of the article. He points out what the laws are in Missouri. Doesn't say things like this is a bad law, but that we believe in supporting the law. So, understand that if you come to Missouri, even as a free black, you might get arrested, end up in jail, might not be able to get you out of jail. It's going to be hostile to you. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And he says in there, he says, listen, slaves are real estate in this and other states. Quote unquote, slaves are real estate in this and other states. And wisdom would dictate great care among the branches of the Church of Christ on this subject. So long as we have no special rule in this church as to people of color, let prudence guide. And while they, as well as we, are in the hands of merciful God, we say, shun every appearance of evil. So he's saying, don't come here. Let's not challenge this law. Well, I think it appears to me that the non-Mormons in Jackson County and surrounding areas only saw the title, Free People of Color.
They read the headline.
Which they read to be, we need to free the people of color, right? Yeah. Not a message to free people of color. And they got super worked up. So I think it was the 16th of July, 300 of these non-Mormons signed a manifesto, which was essentially a declaration to drive Mormons out. In the manifesto, they called the Mormons deluded fanatics. They compared Joseph Smith and the members of the church as imposters of Muhammad. They claimed the blasphemy of the Most High God, said the dogmas were absurd and blasphemous dogmas. I want to kind of remind everybody that there was no doctrine on polygamy. There was no doctrine on eternal progression. I mean, it hadn't been clarified.
We're talking D&C 76. We're talking the first vision.
Yeah.
And even the publication of the Book of Mormon as new scripture. We're talking.
Sort of like the elementary school Mormon doctrine, right? And they condemned the claims of revelation, of speaking in tongues, the claims of laying on of hands. They called the faith a gross insult on the laws of God. They accused the Mormons of being more clannish than the Indians, objected to the Mormon schools and their economic cooperation. We talked about a little bit about that in a previous podcast, and they feared, and I think this is honestly really the crux of the whole thing. They feared the growing numbers of the saints would give them political power over the non-Mormons in the county, and so they pledged in this manifesto to drive the saints out peaceably if they can, forcibly if we must. And they formed a committee to enforce the manifesto. The manifesto is then read in public on July 18th. It's published in a number of the newspapers in the surrounding communities. And then on the 20th of July, the leaders of the mob called a meeting with W.W. Phelps and other church leaders. They gave Phelps and his fellow church leaders 15 minutes to agree to move the whole Mormon community away the next spring or suffer the consequences. And of course, Phelps and Edward Partridge, and they felt like they couldn't just agree to that. They had received a revelation from God to be there, right? And so then they battered down the door of Phelps' house. They threw the printing press out of the second story window to the street below, and they destroyed the building. The Phelps family was left to seek shelter that night in an abandoned stable. Bishop Edward Partridge and Charles Allen were tarred and feathered, and Sidney Gilbert's store was attacked. And so 3 days later, just seeing no alternative to all of this, Phelps, Partridge, and other church leaders formally agreed that all the saints would evacuate by April 1834. Now, this is July, and it took until August 9th for Joseph Smith to get this, to find out what had happened. It was a 2.5 week journey. I think it was Oliver Cowdery went to bring that message back to Joseph. And it was 900 miles, so it was a bit of a trek. In the meantime, this all goes down around July 20th, and Joseph receives this revelation, D&C 97, on August 2nd. Calgary shows up a week later, August 9th, to give Joseph the news of what's going on in Jackson County. So he receives this revelation, and he puts a letter in there with it and mails it to the leadership in Jackson County. So when they get this revelation, they've just gone through some tremendous suffering.
Yeah.
But the revelation really speaks comfort to them.
Right.
And it was really warming to their souls. There's a verse in this revelation, verses 10 through 17, command them to speedily build a house of the Lord in Jackson County. So you got to build a temple there too. But verse 26 says, but if she observe not to do whatsoever I have commanded her, I will visit her according to all her works, with sore affliction, with pestilence, with plague, with sword, with vengeance, with devouring fire. And we know they were burned out of their homes. According to Parley P. Pratt's autobiography, he writes that this revelation was not complied with by the leaders and church in Missouri as a whole, notwithstanding many were humble and faithful. Therefore, the threatened judgment was poured out to the uttermost, as the history of the 5 following years will show. It was a rough time, 1833 to 1838. Actually, I want to say even until 1839.
Wow. Yeah. And I imagine, like, the terror. I imagine receiving that instruction that it's time to build a temple in Jackson County when my leaders have just had to make a covenant or a promise, an agreement to leave by April with terror.
Yeah.
I can see that being really challenging.
Yeah, it's interesting how the Lord works, because every word is important.
Yeah.
And sometimes, well, I should say most of the time with me, I miss some of those words. They kind of get by me. I'm not tuned into them. It's almost like, I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I feel like when you buy a car, you're like, hey, this is a great car. Suddenly, it seems like every 8th person on the road is driving that car, right? And it's like you never saw that car before anywhere. And sometimes I feel like that's the way it is with me, at least with the gospel, that I read something and I don't really get it until I get it, right? And then suddenly it's there, it's everywhere. The words are revealed that way. So where I'm going with that metaphor of the cars is, and things not jumping out, is verse 21. Therefore, verily, thus saith the Lord, let Zion rejoice, for this is Zion, the pure in heart. Until this scripture, Zion was always a place. And the Lord says here, this is Zion. Zion is the pure in heart. It's the first time that the Lord hints that it's not so much a physical place. Mm-hmm. Up until this time, whenever the saints talked about Zion, they were talking about Independence, Missouri. That was Zion.
Yes.
And this was the beginning of understanding that we carry Zion with us.
Yeah. Okay, I love that. And one of the things that strikes me on this, when we go back to 94, which was also revealed at the same time, and the Lord talks about building these houses, he says, it shall be dedicated unto the Lord from the foundation thereof. That just really struck me, because the saints were able to lay the cornerstone for the temple in Jackson County. Were they not?
Yeah, they did. Mm-hmm. It's still there.
I remember being in Jackson County and going to the temple lot. I just love the idea that we dedicate wholly unto the Lord from the foundation, whatever work that we're doing. Because It means that all of it is of value. All of it affects our hearts where we become pure, right? And eventually the Lord is laying down his work. He has the whole picture. And there's going to be a time when the whole jigsaw puzzle comes together and we look at it and we go, oh, yeah, I get it now. The idea that we start with the foundation and we dedicate even the foundation to the Lord. And everything that we give to him then has all of the work that we do, then has validity, even if we don't get it finished in our lifetime, because it has effect on our hearts, and we're building Zion as we build pureness of heart. What do you think, Gunnar?
No, I think that's great. I think it reminds me of last week's episode where we talked about David Bednar's painting, where every brush stroke is painted on the canvas of our heart, and each little thing that we do might not seem all that significant, but in the end it creates a magnificent painting. And it's so hard to maintain an eternal perspective when you're caught up in the whirlwind of the world. I completely get how people fret and how that fretting can be overpowering. I think it's magnificent that the time that we live in, where there are so many temples around, and we can find, no matter how busy and hectic things are around us, we can find absolute peace and quiet and commune with the Lord.
We desperately need it.
Yeah.
And what an incredible price the early saints paid to bring that into our lives.
Yeah. So it looks like we're ready to wrap. And I'd like to say that for me, my big takeaway in all of this is Hiram. Hiram's excitement about building a house of the Lord. He was so thoroughly excited. Lucy Mack Smith, his mom, talks about it as you know, it was hard to get him to slow down as he's running through the house to get the scythe. The way she describes it was like she's like running after him, and he didn't have time to talk to her, right? And he's just calling out. He says, "We've been commanded to build the house of the Lord, and I am committed to strike the first blow." He says he wanted to be the first one working on that, and to feel his excitement in knowing they were building a house for the Lord, and his completely uncynical attitude about the promise that Jesus Christ was going to come and visit them in that house, and that they were going to be endowed with power from on high. Just no question about it, and super excited. And it all happened and continues to happen in our temples. I think we risk temples becoming so ubiquitous that we forget how exciting they are.
Right.
And I want to have Hiram's joy and excitement and anticipation about the temple. I enjoy the temple. I like going to the temple, but I want to be super excited about it.
On fire.
Like Hiram.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And I love that message that you shared today. Don't be stuck by the impossibility of the task before us.
Mm-hmm.
Just step forward with what you have. Because when we're obeying the commandments of the Lord, even when they're a commandment to our own heart, like happened with your MBA, when we're obeying the commandment of the Lord, he prepares the way as we go. I love that. The other thing that strikes me as really important in here for me in order to build Zion is, first of all, to embrace and welcome the chastening of the Lord. And second of all, to seek to build relationships that allow me to show up real as me, because it's in those equal to equal relationships that we really build Zion. So that's it for today. We're still learning, just like you, and hope to see you again next week.